So this was the first episode where we've moved past the setup of the show. And what I mean by that is they've introduced what I assume are going to be all the main characters and storylines for this season. And I figured once we finished with that the story would start moving a little quicker, but it really doesn't. The good thing is there was no Harfoot story this week, but the previews show that they will return in next week's episode. Alright, so since we ended with the character Adar not quite revealed at the end of the last episode, I thought we'd start with that. So it looks like Uncle Benjen not only survived, but can hop between universes. That's a Game of Thrones reference for those who didn't watch the show. Also, Robert Aramayo, the Elrond actor, also portrayed a young Eddard Stark in Game of Thrones, who is the brother of Benjen. So a little piece of trivia for you there. But we get a very underwhelming introduction to the character of Adar. And I'm glad that I said that I wasn't sure about this being the current form of Sauron, because he is definitely not. We still don't know who or what he is exactly, though it would seem from the fact that he remembers Beleriand, which was once a part of Middle-earth before it was destroyed at the end of the First Age, that he is either an elf or a human sorcerer who was granted a long life. Yes, there were humans who worked for Morgoth, but also elven spies, though the elves were a lot more unwilling. Either way, it's very likely that he served Morgoth and is possibly serving Sauron, though I'm not entirely sure because it sounds like he has his own plans about becoming a god and remaking the world. It was also weird to me that he mercy kills an orc. He even seems to shed a tear while he does so. This is definitely not any kind of Dark Lord in Middle-earth that we've seen before. Sauron or Morgoth simply wouldn't have cared that a single orc died. It's also uncharacteristic that the orcs care about losing one of their own. Stop trying to give the orcs culture. This isn't Warhammer or the Elder Scrolls, this is Middle-earth. The orcs are just corrupted elves and men being directed by Sauron. It's like with the Book of Boba Fett, where they spent half the season showing us that the Tusken Raiders weren't just barbarians, but they were people too. Except at least for the Tuskens, they are an actual individual species with a culture. The orcs are not. But Adar is looking for the blade that Bronwyn's son Theo took from the basement in episode 1 or 2. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of it is, but the guy who previously had it reveals that it has a connection to Sauron, and that the Dark Forces will be calling upon the people of the Southlands to serve him like they did with Morgoth. Adar ends up sending Arondir to the village of refugees who are currently hiding out at the Elven Watchtower, with a message saying that if the people swear fealty to Adar, that they will be spared. The next part is even easier to summarize. Celebrimbor causes Elrond to become suspicious of Prince Durin, and Elrond ends up finding out that Durin and a group of miners have discovered a vein of mithril, as I predicted in the last review. Durin tells Elrond this and even gives him a piece of mithril after Elrond swears not to tell a soul. Now in the previews for next week's episode, Celebrimbor has the piece, so either Elrond betrays Durin or Celebrimbor discovers it some other way. But apparently the mine is very dangerous, causing King Durin to shut it down, though he ends up sending Prince Durin to Lindon to meet with the elves in order to find out what their real plans are. And that's something we'll see in next week's episode. And then lastly, we head back to Numenor to follow up with the growing cast of Numenorian characters. Elendil's daughter, Eärien, flirts with a guy named Kemen, the son of Pharazôn, an original character for the series. She also witnesses a Make Numenor Great Again rally. No, I'm not kidding. They don't actually call it that, but they might as well have. You have guild members literally talking about Halbrand and Galadriel trying to take their jobs. Get a lot of anti-elf sentiment, and then Pharazôn swoops in to take advantage of their resentment and vows that he won't allow this kingdom of men to be taken over by elves. Now let me make something clear. In Tolkien's writing, the Numenorians of this time period did in fact not like the elves or the Valar, but it was because, and I explained this in my last video, men were barred from the Undying Lands, lands that only the elves could go to. The Numenorians thought that they deserved immortality and thought that it was unfair for them not to get it. This show has managed to take that and boil it down to what is essentially a South Park parody of a MAGA rally. Trump really did a number on Hollywood, and unfortunately a lot of modern entertainment suffers because of it. If you think that any of Tolkien's work was meant to be an allegory for any political struggle or group, you would be incredibly wrong. And when I sit down to watch a show about Middle-earth, the last thing in the world that I want to see is another thinly veiled allegory for Trump and his supporters, just because the creators of said allegory are still hung up on a guy who hasn't been relevant in almost 2 years. I don't care. Yes, we know that you don't like Trump. You've been saying it since Trump first started campaigning. That's what, 8 years of entertainment now? Figure out something else to say, or better yet, why don't you just stick to what Tolkien wrote? Anyways, Muriel is having visions of a giant wave destroying Numenor, and spoiler alert, that is exactly what's going to happen, unless they rewrite that to fit into their current fanfiction. Ironically, this scene somewhat reflects one of the 2 pivotal moments of Muriel's story in the books, as she's only mentioned a handful of times, each time getting no more than a couple sentences. But this one talks about how she tried to escape the downfall of Numenor and fails. And oh yeah, this is a fan illustration, but it's much closer to what Tolkien described than what we got in the show, being described as being fairer than silver or ivory or pearls. But the reason that she's been having this vision is because she touched one of the Palantiri, also known as the Seeing Stones, which Muriel tells Galadriel that there was only 7, but currently 6 are missing. Now in Tolkien's writing, I believe the Numenorians were originally given more than 7, but I do know for a fact that Elendil and his sons left with 7 Palantiri just prior to the fall of Numenor. But anyways, Galadriel tries and fails to convince Muriel to bring her armies to Middle-earth to fight Sauron in the Southlands, and ends up in jail, because of course she does. She escapes and makes her way to the Tower of Tar Palantir, and finds out that he's basically sick and senile, and once again she is rebuked by Muriel, who decides to send her back to Middle-earth, but changes her mind at the last minute because she sees petals falling from the white tree and sees that as a sign from the Valar. Muriel does a complete 180 and says that she will go to Middle-earth herself to aid Galadriel in her quest against Sauron. Elendil starts gathering troops for an expeditionary force, and I guess in order to make up for getting his friends kicked out of the Sea Guard because he wanted to go into the west of Numenor instead of being a sailor, Isildur decides that he's going to go to Middle-earth, even further from the west of Numenor. Before I end the video, there were a few interesting Easter eggs here. In the room with the Palantir, there are various items placed along the walls. We see Narsil eventually becoming the blade that was broken, reforged as Anduril, and given to Aragorn. Now this blade is supposed to belong to the Lords of Andúnie, so technically Elendil should be in possession of it. Not sure why it's just sitting in this room. You also have Dramborleg, the axe of the hero of the Edain Tuor, who used it to slay 3 Balrogs during the fall of Gondolin in the First Age. His swan shield is also there. And Tuor is also the grandfather of Elrond and Elros, the first king of Numenor, which is why those items are there, as they are basically a royal inheritance. And I could be wrong, but I think this is the dragon helm of Dor-lómin, which belonged to Tuor's cousin Turin, another great mortal hero of the First Age. I don't know how I ended up there. I could have sworn in the tale of the children of Húrin that it was buried with him, or maybe his father had it, but he also died, so I'm not really sure. For the most part, everything about this episode was pretty underwhelming, especially Adar. From what I've been hearing, Sauron isn't even being introduced this season, which means that Adar is the main enemy. But honestly, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. I mean, right now he's just ransacking villages, and there are elven cities up north, there's the dwarves, and there's now a Numenorian force on the way. But honestly, I can't really predict what's going to happen in the next episodes. Galadriel never went to Numenor in the books. Muriel never left Numenor, let alone led an army to Middle-earth. And none of the characters in the Arondir storyline or in the Harfoot storyline even exist in the books. So I don't really know where they're going with that. It's anyone's guess, really. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comment section below. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Also, click that notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. I'll see you all next time.